Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Larry Farver, and let's queer up the worldview. UK judge bans uniformed police from marching with pride flag, sparking LGBTQ backlash. Well, just days before this weekend's Pride in northern England, a court ruling in Northumbria has ignited outrage across the queer community. In a controversial decision, British Judge Mr. Justice Linden ruled that uniformed police officers who marched under the Progress Pride flag at last year's parade breached their duty of impartiality. The judge sided with a female event participant, Lindsey Smith, who claimed the officers' presence and the display of pride imagery, including a rainbow-colored police van, threatened her safety and showed support for gender ideology. Linden stated, quote, "The fact that they wore their uniforms, marched as a contingent, and carried the police pride and other flags demonstrated their support for the cause as police officers," end quote, adding that this implied bias against those with gender-critical views. Quote, "It's not hard to imagine circumstances in which officers questioned might be called on to deal with a clash between gender-critical people and supporters of gender ideology, and therefore situations where the former has cause for concern as whether they were being dealt with impartiality," end quote. Critics of the decision say it's laced with bias itself and could roll back years of progress in police and LGBTQ community trust. In response, Northumbria police said that the priority last year was to keep people safe and added that marching in Pride gave them a chance to engage with people, including those who may have less confidence in policing. The department hasn't yet confirmed if officers will participate in this weekend's Pride. Well, having come from many, many years of going to New York Pride parades, in my coming out process and really up until I came down to South Florida, I think it's important to engage. Certainly some people may take issue with uniformed officers, whether you're in the police department or firemen or, those types of things. But I know that there were many contingents wearing T-shirts, carrying banners, floats. I think it's important that there be trust and rebuilt between the police. I know that there are people in our community who strongly disagree. I've been on, past panels where people have argued that something as simple as maybe the security they have at Stonewall Pride in Wilton Manors is overdone. I beg to disagree. I'd rather be safe. We're fortunate in our local communities in Fort Lauderdale and Wilton Manors, for example, to have governments and leadership that engage not only our community, but other communities as well. So what are your thoughts?
Ooh, I will tell you, yesterday, one of my friends told me the story about these police that were targeting LGBTQ, and they actually got busted later in many years. And all I can think about is the police are part of our society. The trust is critical for them to participate and to recognize our groups and in a favorable way does build trust. It does build, community. And it also lets the community know that, they're, looking out for people generally. The fact that they're dressed in LGBTQ rainbows doesn't make them ineffective in terms of defending the law. So, I think, again, it's an excuse for someone to take a shot at the LGBT community because I think it's a step in the right way to have them participate the way they do. So I find it the ruling offensive, and I'm sorry it happened. And hopefully we'll be able to move past that.
I want to know who it says that she was an event participant.
I was going to ask the same question.
Was she an event participant? So that, I don't know how British common law works necessarily, but was she an event participant so that way she would have standing in order to bring a premeditated court case to the judge?
Right.
Does that make sense?
But she was a participant at Pride.
So she would, or maybe she was like one of those people where she's like a lesbian that doesn't like transgendered people, or.
I had the same question, but
right.
We have to look at at police in general. I mean, for decades they've been, marginalized people have always hated police. I mean, the police were there at Stonewall, Black Lives Matter. So police in general have a lot of ground to cover when you talking about gaining trust. And there are thousands of studies out there that show that a very small pride flag in the window of a store or as a lapel pin or even a pocket square can make that other person feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And
so while I understand, having a background with people in the military where they're not allowed to do things in uniform, so while I understand where the sentiment is coming from, where people need to feel that the people of law are non-partial. Unfortunately, we know that our government's not non-partial, so why would anything else be? However, as a queer community, seeing the police, the fire, the Army, the Navy, Air Force, Marines, all of them there in support, at least we know that there is a small faction of the larger system that we have been riling up against that is in support of us. And if I've run across police officers that had a small pride pin on their outfit, and right then my guard came down. I knew that I was talking to somebody that I could trust. And
Absolutely.
so, I also question this Lindsey woman. Like, if she was a participant, why would she feel unsafe if she was at the very event? If she's straight, why is she at Pride? And then why is all of a sudden she feel unsafe? She should feel unsafe about the queens that are in the sidelines more than the police officers marching, because those queens will turn on her quicker than anybody else. I mean, honestly. So I had the same question. But we hope and pray that everybody is always safe and can trust the law enforcement around them, because they are there to serve and protect.
And I got to tell you too, I mean, police have had such a hard run. It's the hardest job in the world. And people automatically profile against the police.
Well, because there's been some bad apples.
Well, there have been bad apples, but, generally speaking, there are a lot of great people who are upholding the law and making a better community, protecting us. And for them to be a part of the community, it also is better for them.
And that's why they need to be part of the community, to show that.
Exactly.
I think, I'm not going to comment on that aspect of it necessarily, but to talk about this point is to say that, I think the gay rights movement is really starting to branch off into, we have like a gender movement, as well as we have the kind of older gay rights movement, and it's kind of diverging and not converging, if that makes sense. And I think from what I was hearing in the complaint was that they were talking about gender ideology. It didn't talk about sexual orientation, and I think people are very afraid of this non-binary, gender non-conforming, things that talk about gender. I think that's the new frontier when it comes to gay rights and gay liberation, and I think we're going to see where that leads us, just in terms of where the movement goes, and I think that we're experiencing that backlash right now. I think the haters are always going to hate everything related to LGBTQ plus people. I think right now they've kind of laid off people that are attracted to people of the same gender. And I think what they're doing is they're focusing their spotlight now on people that are gender nonconforming, people that are non-binary, people that are transgendered, because that's the new target in the community. And I think that's what's happening.
And those are the ones that need to really see the law enforcement on their side, because trans people are being targeted, non-binary. And so I think their presence at the parades are even more critical in a more friendly, not just standing at our gates and standing on the sidelines, but actually being in the parade and showing that they are there with us.
I agree.
So that is our big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.